Okay, so I'm Megan Hartick.
I'm Elizabeth Walmsley.
I'm Rachel Winslow.
I'm Matt Latham.
We're going to talk about sex today with you guys. And our wicked problem was the high rates of STI and teen pregnancy. So first I'm going to start you off with some scary statistics. So each year 20 million STIs occur, and teens make up about 50% of those. So that's about 10 million STIs that are contracted by teens each year. And only 22% of teens were tested for an STI in 2013, and nearly 10,000 young people were diagnosed with HIV in 2013. 1 in 4 girls will give birth before the age of 20, according to the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy. That's a birth rate of 26.5 per 1,000 women. 47% of teens reported that they were sexually active in 2013. 41% reported that they didn't even use a condom, and 15% reported that they had sex with 4 or more people during their lifetime, which is while they're still young, so that's kind of a lot. So the lesson why is that teens are having sex. It's kind of obvious, not everyone obviously, but a lot of people are. But that's not the wicked problem. STIs and unintended pregnancy are occurring from them not having proper education or resources to protect themselves. So if we keep the solution of like looking the other way because we're uncomfortable about it, it's only going to fuel the issue further, and it's just going to cause way more problems. So for our human element, who is this affecting? Well, obviously the most direct impact is going to be on the teens. It leads to high dropout rates. 50% of teen mothers receive a high school diploma by the age of 22. So that's only half of the girls that are getting pregnant are receiving a high school diploma, which obviously that's going to affect them and their child. Only STIs can lead to severe health consequences, and they have caused 24,000 women to become infertile each year. So that's a huge deal. And so if you're planning on having kids in the future and you get an STI when you're young and you become infertile, it's just like a huge thing. It also has a direct effect on the babies born to the teen moms. Children of teen moms are more likely to have decreased school achievement, increased dropout rates, more health problems, become incarcerated at some point during their adolescence, give birth as a teen, and face unemployment as an adult. So those are huge issues, and obviously not all of them are going to have that happen to them, but they have higher rates of it. Teen moms infected with STIs may face stress and stigmas from peers and adults at school. And a third party that you wouldn't really think is affected by teen pregnancy is the taxpayers. And in 2013, childbirth accounted for $9.4 billion of taxpayers' money for health care and foster care and increased incarceration rates of the children of teen parents. So some of the systems that surround this are the misbelief that everyone's doing it. So this one's more about social pressures. They did a study on freshman high school girls and asked them kind of what were their reasons for feeling pressure to have sex in high school, or why did they have sex, and a lot of them reported they felt pressure to fit in. 29% of girls experienced pressure to engage, whether it was verbal, coercive pressure, which means begging, like attempt at flattery. These include like, you want to, like, don't be a prude, don't make me stop, stuff like that. While other girls faced exploiting emotion, so like making someone say like, oh, you don't love me, like you won't have sex with me, you must not love me, stuff like that. So they're feeling huge pressure from their peers to have sex. This can lead to teens having sex before they're ready, and the earlier onset of sexual activity leads to greater risks of STIs, unintended pregnancies, and lower use of contraception, along with more lifetime sexual partners. So the more that they feel pressure, the more likely they're going to do it, and if they don't have the right means to protect themselves, and it's just going to further fuel this issue that we're facing. Another one is, you wouldn't really think it, but it's like media outlets. So it was a study about 17 magazines, so I'm sure you've all seen like the Cosmo magazines, the Giant Eagle, and like everything that say like great sex tips, or like what to do with your boyfriend or whatever like that. And that's where girls are literally getting their education. Like that's literally what people are using to educate themselves about how to have sex and how to protect themselves. And there are some pros to it, along with cons. The pros are that 17 magazines specifically really gave a positive and non-judgmental, straightforward message about sex. They said that it was normal that girls were engaging in sexual activity, and they recognized that teens are really curious about sex. So they're trying to make teens feel like they're not the only ones, like it's normal. They also encourage personal responsibility to reduce STIs and unintended pregnancies. But unfortunately, girls using this as the only source of education isn't really great, because They have a lot of cons. They provide the researchers with non-scientific evidence, and they really lack serious, significant information that they're missing to promote to these teens. It was argued that the information published is not as accurate and reliable as it could have been, and these findings from 17 magazine match those studies done with other popular media outlets. So 17 was several opportunities to provide precautions and preventative measures of STIs, and both 17 and other popular magazines don't provide enough contraceptive measures based on the amount they publish about sex. So they're publishing all this information about what to do, like how to have great orgasms and how to have great sex, but they're not showing us how to protect ourselves compared to how much they're telling us basically how to have great sex. So basically there's a lot of information, but limited information on how to protect and be safe about it. So if teens have nowhere else aside from these magazines to obtain this information, a lot of this information is really misleading. So they can find the information unreliable, and it'll make them make more unhealthy and risky choices about their sex life, which is just gonna, like I said, further this problem.
I did a little bit of research on abstinence-only sex ed and the public and private school teachings. I thought this was kind of interesting because I was thinking back to my childhood when it was me and my best friend Sarah, who lived about 3 houses down from me, went through sex ed about the same time. I was at a Catholic school and she was at a public school. And when we were talking about what we had learned, she learned about like what condoms were, how to use them. I didn't know what a condom was. So, like, yeah, that was what this means. In order for something to be considered abstinence-only teaching, it has to follow these 8 steps. So it teaches only the biological pros and cons, or pros of waiting to have sex. They don't teach the pros of actually having sex because they do exist, believe it or not. Waiting until marriage is the standard, and it's what is expected of you. Waiting is the only way to prevent STIs and pregnancy, and protect yourself from unwanted things. Monogamous marriages are the standard, so you can't have polyamory, polygamy, none of that. Monogamy is the way to go. Having sex outside of marriage will lead to bad consequences, and kids need to learn to reject sexual advances and things like alcohol, drugs. A lot of times dare is kind of tied in with this. And the kids need to know that they need to be self-sufficient before they do have sex in case pregnancy occurs, and you'll be able to afford to raise your child. Abstinence-only teaching, there's no scientific research that supports that it's okay, or that it works. A lot of times it contains false and medical inaccuracies. And there was a researcher who went into a high school in Tennessee and recorded one of the lessons that the kids were having and reviewed it with a medical doctor. And one of the statements that says that condoms break, they tear, they have holes in them, and they have a failure rate of 14%, wasn't actually true. They said the actual failure rate is closer to 1.6% or 3.6%. And condoms are tested rigorously in the lab before they're actually packaged and sent out. And one of the reasons, or the many reasons that they fail is just because they're being used wrong. And then there was another statement that said that an STD is going to be the new AIDS, or worse than AIDS potentially. And the doctor said that other diseases have been speculated to be as deadly as AIDS, but they're not STDs. The one that they were specifically talking about was meningitis, which is, it could be as bad as STD, or as AIDS, but it's not actually an STD. Antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea was thrown out, but nobody has actually died from that, so they can't really say that it's as bad or worse than AIDS. There was a study that was done in 2007 by the Mathematical Research Company that was authorized by U.S. Congress to see if abstinence-only sex ed had any kind of an impact or was better than the comprehensive sex ed. And basically the survey, what happened was 2,057 students who had abstinence-only or sex ed, or comprehensive sex ed was split into 2 groups, and after 3 to 5 years, they were handed out a survey. And the results from the survey showed that they were about the same age when they first had sex. Amount of protection that was used and how often they used protection was about the same. So there was really no significance in the study, or at least the results showed that there's really nothing that abstinence-based only sex ed doesn't really have much of an impact over the When you get into Catholic schools, the Vatican, where a lot of the Catholic decisions in the Catholic Church are made, Pope Pius XI and Pope Pius XII didn't want sex ed to be taught in Catholic schools because they felt that it could be classified as erotic information, and they felt that the parents should be the ones that were really teaching it, not the schools. They felt that if you give boys and girls at like a young age information about sex, it will make them more curious and will lead to pure thoughts and won't start doing things that they shouldn't. They felt that this really should be more of a time to teach purity, modesty, and morality. Currently, the abstinence only is still used in Catholic schools, but there's more of an emphasis on like hygiene, and they do learn like basic anatomy practices. With the Catholic Church, a lot of what they want to focus on is adultery and having sex out of wedlocks are serious sins. That sex before marriage can lead to diseases that can't be cured, and it can mess with your psychological and mental, with your psychological health. Abstinence is also the only way to protect yourself from diseases in pregnancy. Also causes emotional damage, so they don't learn about contraceptives at all. Or if they do, it's a very, very minimum. With public schools, Ohio doesn't have any rules in place that make sex education consistent across the state, but they do say that you have to have something. Like you have to be either, if you're going to teach comprehensive or if you're going to teach abstinence-based, you've got to teach kids something. But this is up to the districts, and this is why it's not consistent throughout.
Okay, so I won't bore you with like the whole systems thing because we're short on time and it's not really that exciting. But the Stockenberg system was the foundation, so it's the sexual behavior. And then the flow for ours was knowledge. So that's kind of what is helping. Either it can cause the problem to further itself or it can kind of pull it back. Religious beliefs, like Elizabeth talked about, could be some buffers that we face. And then another important one is the paradigm. This is like how this system arises. So this could be like hormones or human nature or embarrassment and stuff like that. So the current programs, actions, and policies. So the first one you wouldn't think is actually like a thing, but withdrawal as a method of prevention is a thing. And withdrawal is pulling out. I don't know if everyone knows that. It's kind of like the scientific term. It's a nicer way of saying like pulling out before ejaculation, obviously. So this obviously offers no protection against STIs and little to no protection against pregnancy, but 10.2% of the almost 5,000 sexually active teens surveyed are using this method. So I don't really know why that's like something that they're doing. That same percent is the same amount of people who use no preventative measure at all. So you might, I mean, I don't want to say you might as well not use it, like might as well not do this, but you might as well not do it because it's not doing anything. Teens reported various motivations for using withdrawal. These include dissatisfaction with other methods, so maybe they don't like wearing condoms and stuff like that. Maybe they're not on birth control, they don't like how it makes them feel. Miscommunication with their partner, peer influence, ease of use, and relationship factors such as length of relationship. So if you're in a relationship for a really long time, you're maybe thinking like, oh, like it's fine if I use a condom, like I know there's sexual history. Well, so you're pregnant, but I guess if you want to do that, that's fine. So this action is another factor for just sexual and other health risk behavior. So it's really, it's not a good method, but.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the current sex ed curriculum right now going on in schools. So currently, sex ed in schools isn't reducing the STI rate or pregnancy rates. So whatever's going on in the schools right now isn't really helping at all, whether it's abstinence or other methods. So it's basically causing students to lack the knowledge to be sexually active, but teens are sexually active, so schools need to put in place mandatory sex ed courses. And if they don't implement these problems, STIs and pregnancies will definitely be a growing problem, and we're seeing that currently. And if these courses are not in place, risky sexual behavior will occur, and teens don't know how to protect themselves from STIs. They don't know about prevention methods like birth control, orally, or condom use, and it's causing lots of problems. Each year in the United States, more than 750,000 women ages 15 to 19 become pregnant, with more than 80% of these pregnancies unintended. So these teens are not using protection, they don't want to become pregnant, but since the school didn't implement any education, they didn't know how to protect themselves. So it's kind of the school's fault. They're kind of at blame because the teens didn't know. And how should they know when they're not being taught anything? In this day and age, it's unrealistic to say that teens aren't having sex, so abstinence really is hard to come by nowadays. No abstinence only until marriage program has been shown to help teens delay the initiation of sex to protect themselves when they do initiate sex, yet the United States government spends over $1 billion supporting abstinence-only marriage programs. So this is a huge problem. They see that it's not helping at all, but they're still spending their money that way. It's the teens' right to be exposed to this knowledge. It's helping their health to be sexually healthy, and most teens are sexually active, so you might as well be healthy about it and worry about your STI rates going down. Young people in the United States ages 15 to 25 make up only 1/4 of the sexually active population, but they contract about half of the 19 million sexually transmitted diseases annually. So that statistic alone shows that teens are having sex, they're getting STIs, and it's growing and it's adding to the STIs in the country. And this also shows that teens are having sex younger than the age of 15. And most people would see that as shocking, but it's a real thing and it happens. So if teens have an STI by the age of 15, that means they're having sex earlier than 15. And if you think about it, age 15 is about a sophomore in high school. And I know my first sex course health class was in my sophomore year. So if teens are having sex before sophomore year, then that means that they don't have any knowledge of a way to protect themselves. So we need to put sex ed courses a lot earlier, even in junior high and maybe sometimes elementary school, because the more proactive you are, the less likely that you will become pregnant and the less likely you will get an STI when you are sexually active. So basically just a lack of knowledge problem.
Alright, so then I'll talk about the other current program of abstinent only. It just teaches no sex before marriage, pretty basic. Be on your best behavior, so don't drink, don't do drugs, don't put yourself in these positions with people, don't go in the basement with your girlfriend, and just don't put yourself in different situations. Abstinence only doesn't teach about contraception or condoms and these other ways of not being pregnant. And it is a 100% effective way not to get pregnant and not to get an STI. If you are abstinent, then there's no chance of you becoming pregnant or getting an STI. These are some of the states. I'm a financial mathematics major, so I relate to graphs and statistics. So I have quite a few of them throughout my presentation. But as you can see, there's about 19 states that have abstinence-only policies. It's failing. The first average age of intercourse is 17.7 years for men and then 17.4 years for women. So they're pretty equal, but then as you see, the first age of marriage is 27.1 years and for women is 25.3 years. So obviously there's a big disconnect in between the first time they have intercourse and the first time they get married. And these numbers are similar for abstinence-only people who were taught through the abstinence-only program and people who were also taught through the comprehensives, or who were not taught the abstinence-only program. So that sort of backs up the statement that abstinence-only policy does not work, and there needs to be a new policy in place. So one of the other current programs going on in big cities such as Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Francisco, it's an automated texting robot that has a frequently asked questions list, and basically you send them a text and say, you just ask them whatever question you would like, and then it sends you back an answer, so then you get it quick. Because a lot of these teens, you guys know, like your lives are really busy, you don't have time to just like go drop into the health clinic and ask them one simple question. You just send them the question, you send them your question, and they send you back the answer. And they'll also give you information on the surrounding health clinics in case you don't have internet on your phone or you don't know where the surrounding health clinics are. They'll provide the information for you. The information that it gives you is knowledgeable. It's backed by science. It's not going to give you bull crap, basically, because these kids need reliable information. And it's also anonymous. Nobody knows that you're texting them. They don't put your number. They don't put it out on social media that you texted them and said. They don't post to Facebook. So everything that you ask them is confidential. And there's also a program in North Carolina. It's called the Birds and Bees Text Line. And this is similar to the other program, but this program is an actual person on the other line. So you actually have a one-on-one exchange between yourself and the person as opposed to a computer. So your conversations with them are private. Everything that you say, it's anonymous. They won't tell anybody. They won't tell your parents. It's personal. You can ask them anything. They'll give you good advice. You can be honest with them because they'll be honest with you as well. And they won't tell your parents if you don't want them to. They won't tell the doctor if you don't want them to. It's all anonymous. So it's proven an effective way for teens who have really latched on to this technological age to find out information about sex. And a couple other guidelines, just no medical advice. They're not doctors. They're not going to act like they're doctors. They don't advocate abortion. They don't persuade you in one way or another. They're just there to listen. They're there to help you and provide information for you. If you do need to be referred to a health clinic, they will do that for you. They'll send you the right direction. And they're just there to be a kind person, just to give you advice, just to listen to you, and be someone there that cares about you, in case you have no one else to talk to.
So our policy, we split it into 3 parts.
For my policy, I thought that human biology should be stressed. I'm a biology major, so I guess it fits in with that. They should be taught things like anatomy, physiology, psychology, and then the human development as well. Kids need to learn the responsibilities of being a parent, including like financial, how to budget, things that people don't really think about, like paying bills. Kids should have plenty of time for class discussions, so they can talk with their peers and just see what everyone else is thinking, and gain confidence about talking about the subject because it can be kind of touchy. Religious ideas, I guess it's just more silly cultural ideas, more so because there's more than one way to have a healthy sexual relationship. Monogamy is not the only way to have a relationship. So learning about what other people in other areas of the world do might make them feel more comfortable about if they're feeling that, if they feel different, then it's okay. They need to learn medically accurate STI information. So if they do happen to get one, we want them to know what to do, who to go to, how to treat it, and then as well as that they need to learn how to use the contraceptives properly. And then anti-bullying, we felt it was important because this is a time when transitions are being made, and it's a hard time in everyone's life anyway. So learning that everybody's different, everyone ages, develops at different rates, it's all normal, and people shouldn't be put down for it.
So the second part is learning how to talk with the parents. And I don't know about you guys, but my mom was not like Regina George's mom and did not offer me condoms. So I don't think a lot of parents do that, and I think a lot of parents are not comfortable even talking to their kids about sex, let alone walking in on them and their boyfriend. So my policy kind of has to do with my major, because I'm a psychology major, so it's kind of a counseling side to it, but it's more from a parental perspective. So a study showed that teens are influenced by their parents' values, beliefs, and expectations of appropriate behavior. And parental protection has shown to have various effects. Some studies show that it lowers the likeliness that you're going to encounter or engage in risky behaviors, and other studies show that you're more likely to initiate it at a younger age. But parents having to talk with their teens can really reinforce self-worth and create communication between their parents and their families, according to the CDC. So parents need to be educated about how to talk to their kids comfortably about sex, because it's really taboo and like awkward subject that you probably don't want to talk to your parents about. But it's something that they could really bring a different piece of the puzzle into it and kind of contribute something that your education in school and what you hear from your friends and what you read online and all that kind of stuff doesn't really offer, especially since you look up to them for most of your guidance throughout your life with everything else. So it kind of makes sense as to why you do it with your sex life too. So the community should create programs that help create constructive communication lines between themselves and their teens. So this would include parents going to sessions where they can learn how to have the talk and all that kind of stuff. So basically the parents would get the sex talk first. Parental monitoring is huge according to the CDC. A lot of parents don't really pay attention to that, but not just monitoring like whether or not your kids are having sex, but what your kids are doing, where they're going, who their friends are, what they're involved in, like how they're spending their time. That's important for your guys' relationship. Learning how to build like a healthy relationship with your teen, to have like open communication lines so it's not an uncomfortable topic. It sounds kind of strange, but basic anatomy lessons are probably good on the reproductive system, because parents should probably be informed in case their kid has a question, like what is this, or what does this do, or like where does this go. Obviously it's like more helpful if the parent knows and they're not like, oh, I don't really know, like ask someone else or like look it up or something. It's essential that they're also informed that abstinence only doesn't work. Like the studies that Elizabeth and Rachel kind of went over, and even Matt, it doesn't really work, so avoiding it's not really going to help your teen. If they're more informed, they're more likely to make a better decision health-wise. Teaching the parents the consequences of STIs and unintended pregnancies, so they can share it with their kids. It may sound obvious, but preventative measures and safe measures, not even just like what they are, but also where to get them, because some people may be able to afford like going to the doctor and talking to their doctor about getting on birth control, but some families may not be able to afford that. So they need to provide them with resources as to where else they can go to get that kind of help and resources for their teen if they're not able to do so financially. Parents need to feel comfortable about talking about sex, like themselves. I've studied, or an article that I read online, a guy talked about how like parents aren't even comfortable with the topic of sex sometimes. So if you can't even like talk about sex like in general out loud with like your partner, like who you're, I'm assuming, having sex with, how do you like plan on having it with your kid? Like that's going to be so awkward. Like, so you have to be comfortable talking about it yourself first, and then you can kind of bring your teen into it. One way to do this is going over conflict resolution tips and communication techniques, so parents kind of know how to have the talk and what they need to be doing, and if a problem does occur, what they can do to kind of nip it in the bud and keep it in a more positive direction rather than it turning into like a judgmental argument or something between them and their kid and only kind of furthering the problem. Practicing the talk with other parents and getting feedback and practice, so like open discussion and therapeutic role playing would be really good. So kind of having one couple play the parents and then one couple or one of them play like a teen, so they can kind of just get a feel for it, so it's not like just they're diving into something totally new and it's going to be really uncomfortable. So making the parents comfortable is like kind of the biggest part of this, and making sure that they're paying attention to their teen and just knowing how to have the talk so it's more comfortable, because like I said, they have a huge influence on teens' life. So by us not talking to them, we're really shutting a door on that, and it's already a huge issue. So if we can just open it up and be more comfortable talking about it, it might kind of make them feel more comfortable to come to their parents to ask questions or ask for help.
Alright, so the last part of our policy addresses the different aspect of what the problem of actually like treatment and testing, because if you get educated and then if bad things happen, then you're going to need someone to help you along through that process. So part of the reason that this is part of the policy is because a lot of teens, they feel embarrassment to go to the health center, so a lot of them actually won't go see the health center when they actually need to because they feel embarrassed by it, and they're embarrassed by their friends, embarrassed to their family, different reasons. So that's the first part of the policy. The second part is health clinics need to provide a comprehensive education, not just abstinence-only policy, because that's proven not to work. But then the third part is we need to create more health clinics, because we'll show you later there needs to be more, because there's a very few amount for the large majority of the population. And we need to make them more accessible. That means like meeting the level of the age group that is necessary to go there, and also like the location based. Some people, like teens, they don't have their license, they don't have their cars yet, so there's certain different ways to make that. So health clinics will occur there. You meet with the doctor or the nurse. You can get free condoms there. They'll test and treat STIs. They have a pretty good success rate of treating most of the STIs, I think. They provide the education and advice, and then they have pregnancy